there. There we go. So let's get started on this. Oh, I need to share my screen, don't I? That would be good. All right. Hopefully everybody can see that up there. Nobody's in the way over here. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So we're going to talk about speaking in community, why it's so important, what does it matter, why you should be out there doing it. And first of all, talking about myself, which I really don't like to talk about myself, but if anybody would like to connect with me, right there, you can scan that QR code and go to LinkedIn and you can get all the information about me. I've been doing this for way too long. It says 15 years here. It's actually more like 20. And I do a lot of volunteering and a lot of helping in the community. But yeah, if you ever need to ask me a question, if you ever have a question or anything else, SQLasylum@gmail.com, you can get me anytime. I have an entire slide in here on Slack and Postgres and how to talk to other people. And that's where I'll show you all the resources that are available out there. So it's not just me that you're looking to talk to, it's anybody else in the community. Also, if you're online, I don't know if I'm going to see any chats. Messages come up, so please feel free to unmute and ask me a question if you have a question at all during the slides. You'll watch for me. Okay, so JT will watch also online. So if a chat does come up, either unmute or just put it in the chat and we'll get it out. And anybody here in the room interrupt me at any time. I like this to be as much a discussion as possible, so feel free to interrupt. Okay, so why should you be part of the community? Why does this matter? This is one of those slides that everybody always asks me, like, why are you putting these pictures in your slide? Why does this matter to you? How does this have anything to do related to Postgres? These are two of my favorite pictures because the one on the left to the one on the crack, was a hike in Zion. It's called the subway hike. This hike's almost killed me twice in my life now that I've taken it. And I had to do it 2 times to get this one picture. That's the only reason I did it again. Although I'm talking about doing it a 3rd time, which is really stupid. But basically, my job and what I do and everything else and why I do it is to have passions in my life. And those passions are photography and doing other things. I just mentioned I'm going to Austin for barbecue. I'm going to have that ability to do that here in just a few days, where I'm literally flying into Austin to get barbecue and leave. That's kind of the whole point. So having the ability to do those things, that's why I'm part of the community. I'm part of the community because I have the drive and the passion to not only help, but it's allowed me to do these great things in my life. You know, the jobs that we do is not always fun. It's not always glamorous. We get calls at a lot of different times, but at the same time, it allows us to take time off or do things like this that are very important. The other one, the picture on the right here, is a little waterfall I took in a canyon off Big Cottonwood Canyon. And right after I took this picture, I fell in the river, lost my glasses, scraped up my leg really bad, and had to crawl down kind of the 2 miles. I walked, but it was a really bad day. But I love the picture because I still got the shot that I needed to get, even though I had all this damage and everything that went with it. So this is kind of why I do it. You have to find your own why of why you want to get out there, why you want to speak in the community, why you want to present, why you want to do those things. But I can tell you right now, it pays huge dividends by doing that. Okay, just being up here and speaking and presenting, for all the people that said they're networking or looking for a job or anything else, this makes all the difference in the world, being up there and speaking and presenting. So I strongly suggest, if you get the chance, be part of the community, help out, do those things. Okay. And I lost me. There we go. Okay, so this is the next big question I get. I can't stand public speaking. Everybody is scared of public speaking, or they don't like it, or they have nothing to share. This is my other favorite thing that comes up. They have nothing to share. They don't know what they're doing. That's not true. It takes 20 seconds of courage for you to say, I'm willing to present on this subject. Almost, gosh, what is it now? 15 years ago, that's scary to think about. 15 years ago, I was on a call with Microsoft, and they said, we need someone to put on a code camp in Utah. And there was 5, 6 other people on there. They were all MVPs. I was known as what's known as a SQL Server MVP. I was an MVP, and none of the other engineering people on there said anything. But the DBA on that call said, sure, I'll do it. And here I am 15 years later, still putting on events and still doing it, all because I took 20 seconds of courage to say, sure, I'll figure it out. And I did that over and over again. 20 seconds of courage is all it takes to send in a message and say, I'd like to present on this. And it could be a simple topic, replication for Postgres. It could be performance tuning this idea on Postgres. It can be how to set up Backups on Postgres, very, very simple things that you can do really easily, but just getting that started makes all the difference in the world. That one little step is what changes everything. So 20 seconds of courage is all it takes to really get over that first hump, take that first step. So questions on this? Does anyone know where I came up with the slogan 20 seconds of courage? No, it's from an old movie called We Bought a Zoo. Yeah, nobody knows movie references very much. Okay, so that's 20 seconds of courage. That's what you need to do. So here's my other favorite one. I have nothing to offer. See, I just kind of mentioned this a second ago. You feel like you have no topics that you can talk about. You're brand new in the organization. You're brand new in Postgres. It's anything like that. You just don't know what you need to talk about. Trust me, you always have a perspective that someone else doesn't. I'll use an example of somebody on the phone, Jessica. Jessica came into Podium when I was starting there, and she had a completely different perspective on our systems because she came in. I was already at Podium for several years, but she came in with a brand new, fresh perspective, and she could present to us and teach us that perspective that we didn't see previously. That's very, very powerful and very helpful to do. So even if you think you have nothing to share with the community, trust me, you have something to share with the community. I absolutely guarantee it, you have something to share. The other part of this slide is once upon a time. Now, the most important thing you need to do when you share that information is tell a story, okay? Tell a story. Stories are memorable. I do this in my presentations for my college students, and I'm gonna put a certain gentleman in a red hat on the line here, because I'm gonna tell this story in a Postgres use group too, of all things, and I'm recording it. This is a horrible idea. So, but people remember stories. So about 3 years ago, somewhere around there, I was rather new to the Postgres world. I came from a SQL Server background, wasn't too sure about some things. I was setting up some new servers, and I made a big mistake. Big mistake is that I tried to connect to a production database. I did connect to a production database and restored over the top of it. A running production database, mind you. Now everybody's like, yeah, thank you for the groans. And I'm so glad that I can tell that. I get groans. I tell this to college students, and they're like, you still have a job? Like, oh yeah, somehow I amazingly have still have a job. Mostly because of the gentleman in the red hat. So anyways, basically, I destroyed production. Now, the whole answer to that was, okay, now we have to figure out how to fix it, how to keep moving forward, what to do next to correct it, and what to not have it happen again. That's the sort of thing that you have to do. The point here is that everyone's going to remember this story now. Everyone's going to remember that Pat destroyed a production database. But I can tell you right now, if any of you have been doing this for 10 or 15 years, you've all done it too. I guarantee it. We've all destroyed some sort of database or broke something or ran an update without a where clause. That's the point. That's the point here. If you have nothing to offer, yes, you do. You have those stories to offer. And those stories are powerful. And that's what people remember. Telling this story, make sure you tell that story and you say, this is how I'm going to remember it. Okay. Yes, I still had a job after that day. It was definitely one of those, really hard days and weekends. So
the guy in the red hat's trolling you, Pat.
Yeah. Oh, what did he say in the chat there? Oh, great. What did he say? I can't see the chat. So
It was more than one.
It was more than once. No. Now hold on. Well, if we go back to allegiance, maybe you could say 3 times. So the point is, telling a story is what's very important. And yes, somehow I still have a job after that. For sure, you have something to offer. That's the whole point here. So you have something to offer. You have those stories to tell. Even if it's a bad story. I actually just found a blog just a few days ago, or actually it was last week, came out on Planet Postgres, which I'll talk about in a second. And one of the blogs was how they recovered from a downtime. The same thing. They had a downtime issue. It was a consultant, and they helped them work through this downtime. That's a great story. If you get a chance to read the blog post, it's amazing to see their logic and their thought process, how to do it. You could share nothing more than that in a presentation. You could say, here's the problem we ran into. Here's all the steps we did to fix and how we correct it. We used to do that presentation for Elasticsearch because, we broke that one too. The other one, that's going to make them upset. Okay, so what do you have to do to actually present or get out there or join the community? What do you have to do these things? to get this really started. First of all, start with your why. Why are you doing this? You're doing this to help others. You're doing this to contribute to the community. You're doing this to get a better job in the future. That could be the simple reason right there. Standing up here, networking, doing these things means that in the future, you'll have a better chance at a job because you have other people that you know that you can call upon. And we've seen that right now. Here with Entrada, there's plenty of people that know each other that are thinking of jobs. There's people in the network everywhere that is really what really matters. Have passion. Make sure that when you're up here talking, you have passion in what you do. If you're just up here saying, well, yeah, I broke a database and I kind of did this and that, no, it doesn't work, okay? Be up here, have passion, show it. If you're talking about crashing the database, own it. It happened. Tell a story, I already mentioned that. If you ever want to see a great storyteller, go look up David Phillips on YouTube. He's my favorite. If you look him up and if you watch the presentation, it's quite horrible because he tells a story and he doesn't end it. And it leaves you on a cliffhanger and you want to kill the man. And he's like, see what I did to you? And I'm like, yeah, you horrible person. You just did this. But it's wonderful, wonderful way to see how that story works, okay? Pause the introvert is another great saying that I use all the time. And this one I have to use an example of my good friend, Andrea. Andrea is known as SQL Princess. And she is SQL Princess in the SQL Server user group. Some people in this room probably know Andrea, and some people on the call definitely know Andrea. Andrea is very interesting because she is a diehard introvert. She really is an introvert, but she's presented at users groups, she runs users groups, and she goes to all SQL events in a princess gown, full on princess crown, everything, okay? She walks around like that all day long. You should see her packing for one of our large conferences. It's like 5 suitcases. I cannot understand. Actually, she shoves it all into one. But she's amazing, but she always tells me, I have to pause my introvert inside of me. I have to say, I got to do this for a certain amount of time. And then on Sunday, she doesn't talk to anybody. She stays at home. She doesn't do anything. She relaxes. She gets that back. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm an introverted person. I don't want to stand up here. But you stand up here for maybe 1 hour and then you're done. And then you go and relax and you do something different. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. You can do that. People can do that and get through it. So pause your introvert when you need to. And then the last thing I have is willpower is not the answer. I'm a big fan of this book called Change Anything. It's a wonderful way to learn to do things in a different skill set versus just saying, I've got the will to do it, or I do not have the will to do it. I don't believe in just saying, I've got the will to do it, I'll figure it out. No, if you use something like this book, Change Anything, it'll give you a nice step-by-step process on how you should think about what you need to do and how to make it better. Most of it involves a script. Every time you tell yourself, I'm not going to work on that presentation, have a script ready to say, nope, I'm going to do these steps to work on that presentation. It definitely helps. It makes a huge difference if you can look at Change Anything and listen to it. Great audiobook. I think it's 8 to 10 hours, something like that. I think I've read it 4 or 5 times, something like that. So, okay. Any other questions on the steps? No, I've gone through a whole bunch really quickly. That was kind of a plan because, again, I don't want this to be a long session of me talking. I want to make sure we get to troubles and questions. Yes.
Can you explain a little bit more about willpower? It's not the answer, was it?
So willpower does not solve the problem of getting over the hump of I want to speak or I want to present. If you say to yourself, I'll just get up tomorrow morning and I'll do it, no matter what, I can do it. No, you won't. You have to come up with a script in your head that says, okay, before I hit that button, I'm going to tell myself I must hit this button because I want a future job doing this. I want a future job working somewhere else. I want a future job that pays me $500,000 a year, something to that nature, something specific. By telling yourself that script, that's overcoming willpower issues. That's not just saying I can do it. That's just saying, here's exactly how I'm going to get to it. And that's one thing the book talks about heavily is using a script to figure that out. I use that script every time I pass a 7-Eleven or a donut anywhere on this planet. Okay, another quick story. I've got to say, I was in Washington yesterday. We were in Hermiston, Oregon. There's a little Comfort Inn that we stayed at off the road. This space age gas station, it called itself, had apple fritter donuts, which are my favorite, well, raspberry fritter donuts, but fritter donuts that were like this big. They were seriously the size of a small child, and they were selling them. And I had to do everything I could to tell myself not to buy one of those donuts. I did not because I'm still I have it to get married in a little while, so I did not buy a donut, but it took all of my scripting to do that. Not my willpower, it took my scripting. Because I'll tell you right now, as soon as I went in there, I told myself, okay, go find your water, go get this. You want to make sure that you look good for the wedding. No, I'm not going to touch that donut, not going to touch that donut. Had to do it over and over and over again. Yeah. So that's really what the script is. That's what it makes a difference. Willpower is not the answer. Okay, other questions on this one? And like I said, Change Anything is my favorite book to go over this. Again, it's a quick read. It's one of my favorites. These are the same people that wrote, what's the other one, JT? The Influencer, yeah. These are the same people that wrote Influencer. I like this one a lot more for individual to change your person. Influencers are a lot better for teams, in my opinion. So I really like Influencer if you're a manager, leader of teams, that sort of thing, that's great. But if you want to change anything about yourself, this makes all the difference. So, okay, so here's kind of the slide on resources. And again, you don't have to write all these things down or anything. I'm going to talk about them a little bit. This is in the recording. I'll post these slides also as well on the meetup so that everybody has it. So don't worry about kind of writing them down. And hopefully you've seen some of these. So the Postgres community is, what's the best way I can put this? Not great at being a community right now. Okay, it's got some issues that we're working on that some people in the community are trying to change and trying to make better. One of the big ones is where do you go for help? Because unfortunately in the Postgres community, there's like 9 different places. So I've been trying to drive a lot of people to the Slack channels simply because I think Slack is one of the more modern tools that we all use. That's kind of the most common one I see out there. But there are newsletter lists out there. If you go to this page, this PostgreSQL community page, it'll list all the different things that are out there. The news mailing lists, what's the other one? The IRQ channels or IRC channels, thank you. The IRC channels, again, a lot of people love to use those. They're wonderful. But to me, something that's very common that I use all the time is Slack. So I'm usually in Slack trying to chat in the community there. And don't get me wrong, there's 14,000 people on that Slack channel. So there's a lot. You can get a lot of help and a lot of support. It's just not one central thing for everything. Postgres really hasn't figured that out. So as we grow as a community, this will get better and better. Slack is my favorite. There is a Facebook group for it, but I can tell you right now, it's not terribly active and it's kind of annoying. So I did put it up here to be, conscious of all the different things, but I really don't love the Facebook group. Like I said, community page right there, just go to community. It will list many of these things out as well. Planet Postgres, this is a newer one to me. I really didn't know about before, even though I'm on many of the committees that actually help maintain this. But it's basically just a blog aggregator of a whole bunch of blogs. So it's a great place to look at, read through the blogs that come up, and all of the major contributors in the community are in there with a blog page inside there, essentially. So my goal is probably to, hopefully in this unemployment time, I'll get mine corrected and put it up there as well, too, to start adding to that content. And then the last one I put down here is the Utah Geek Event Slack, which is where I'm probably going to start talking more and more about this group. So this group, I will probably use the Utah Geek Event Slack, or I will make a channel inside the PostgreSQL Slack. One of those two things will happen, to make a channel inside there for a user group or make it in the Utah Geek Events Slack. It's kind of easy for me to do the Utah Geek Events because I own it. It's my Slack group and stuff. But at the same time, I think it'll be easier to have it in Postgres where we can ask general questions and then also come into our own Utah Postgres group and chat about it. So that's my plans there for the Slack, is to use one of those two. If you're not in Utah Geek Event Slack, though, you should be, because we announce all of our conferences there. We have water cooler talks there. We have everything kind of that. Anything in the Utah community that we do all goes to the Utah Geek Event Slack. Okay, so you should definitely be part of that if you are not. And again, I will post these on Meetup, and then you can just go and pick up the links from there. You don't have to pick up anything else. Okay, now open question and answer time. Does anybody have any questions about the presentation? Anything related to presenting? So the last thing I really didn't put on there is, how do you present at this group? Simple, email me. Say, hey, Pat, I'd like to present. That's about it. I'm looking for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, the rest of the year. So we're kind of open on schedule right now. But if you're looking to present, if you'd look to try out, this would be a great time to do it. This would be a great time to try something, to try a presentation. It's a smaller group. I can also help you get ready for the presentation. I've done more presenting one-on-one talks than anybody should have done in their life. So I can absolutely help you get ready if you have a question about getting ready for presentation. Okay, so other questions about the presentation? Yes.
Yeah.
You just cover one topic per session.
So yes, Jessica, we'll get back to you in just a second. Yes, we try to cover one topic per session. If it's in the meetup like this, we will typically ask for a 45-minute to 60-minute presentation, but I'm completely open to someone saying, hey, I've got a 15-minute presentation I have ready. Can I do that? I'll say, sure, let's do that. And we'll do some other discussions during that session as well. In the future, we will want a 1-hour presentation at some point. But if you want to get started and say I have a 15-minute presentation, no problem whatsoever. So, Jessica, did you have something?
Well, more of a comment than a question. Not to be bossy, but I'm pretty sure I'm doing March.
That's right. Yes, yes, you're right. You are doing March. She did say she wanted to do March. She just hasn't given me an abstract and a bio yet. So until she does that, she's not official.
Okay, look, when I come back from my vacation.
Is there a topic? For Jessica, I can't remember what she had planned. What did you have planned, Jessica?
So my plans have changed because I've recently been, what's a polite way to say, fighting, training. I'm probably going to do backups since I have material for that almost ready to go. So yeah, unless anybody has any specific requests.
Yeah. So backups will probably be a plan for March. And again, the whole point here is to get these started. We're definitely going to keep going with more and more content, but we want anything out there. If people want a specific topic, feel free to comment in the meetup and tell us. Does anybody have something on performance linear or logical replication? Sure, we can talk about that. Sometimes there's just people in the group that know that and they can just talk about it. It's also a great place to bring up the question and say, I'm trying to do this, and that's where the group can answer it, even if it's not part of the presentation, which is the next section we're going to get into. If you have a question, I want to just open it to everybody. Okay, any other questions on the presentation? Yes.
Do you have any embarrassing stories you want to tell us about Red Hat?
Not on a recorded YouTube link. Not on a recorded YouTube link. I cannot bring up certain pictures or dialogue.
And we love them, by the way. We really do. Embarrassing stories are always fun.
So the question for the online, just in case you didn't hear, is they wanted embarrassing stories of Mr. Taylor to be presented to the group, but I agreed to not do that in a recorded YouTube.
Well, you know what, though, join the Utah Geek events and the water cooler chats, because, yeah, that's the ideal setting for embarrassing stories.
Yes, not about Jason. That's not embarrassing stories about Jason. It's just we have water cooler talks. So what Jessica is talking about in Utah Geek events, during the pandemic, I started an idea of water cooler talks because none of us were getting together. So in Utah Geek Events Slack, every Tuesday and Thursday, it hasn't been going on for the last 2 weeks. I've been traveling, but every Tuesday and Thursday, normally at 4:30, I open up a Zoom room just like this, and I just say, let's talk. And that's it. It's just an invite to say, let's talk about whatever. I usually will put some kind of crazy topic in there that'll get people talking, like Mac versus Windows or something silly like that, or .NET versus Java or something. But the whole point is you can talk about whatever. And we frequently do. We frequently talk about whatever's going on at the time, the snow, the weather, whatever. So yes, Jason.
How healthy is the community right now around Postgres in terms of contributions to the?
So how comfy is the community?
How
Confident?
healthy? Yeah. Like how many contributions are coming in? Do you feel like it is maintaining its competitive advantage compared to other databases? Or is there another community that's becoming stronger than Postgres?
So the question was for online, just so that everybody hears it, is Jason asked, is the Postgres community getting enough contributions to stay competitive with other relational databases out there as well? Or is it not, basically, is what you're looking for? I believe it is. I believe there's, from the contribution side, it's doing very, very well. From the growing community for DBAs and for people looking for information, it's lagging. So what I mean by that is So Postgres has come up as a developer database, and it's very good, and it does a wonderful job. But as far as tools and administration and training for DBA types inside the Postgres community, it doesn't have as much as some of the other communities out there, say like a MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, or something else. And that's where some of us in the community feel like it's lacking. And I'm giving my opinion here, but the contribution side is great. There's plenty of committers out there, and you have, the only concern I'll give, and Jessica, you're welcome to jump in at any time. The only concern we'll give that's the contribution side is that the contributions are being made from certain large organizations, such as EDB and a few others. And the concern is that if they put too much in from those corporations, it becomes less of open source and more corporation side of things. So that is a concern that's out there. I don't think it's, I don't feel like it's bad right now, but enterprise DB.
Based out of me.
Yeah.
They actually just acquired second quadrant
Yeah,
last year.
that's
and
the other
they-
problem.
They had to change the core team from 5 to 7 because one of the rules was you can't have the majority working for the same company. So because EDB had 2 already out of the 5, and second quadrant had 1, they expanded the core team.
Yeah, that's probably the best part of it, is that Postgres has made its bylaws and everything defend itself. In other words, it has literally made it defend itself. In my opinion, in a lot of cases, like, because I'm putting on a Postgres conference right now, it's made it difficult to do these things. But that's good, because then a company can't come in and own the open source for Postgres. But can it be influenced? It's a whole nother discussion that could still be out there. There's definitely large corporations that are fully committing into Postgres, heavily committed into Postgres, and how much that's going to influence the future, no one knows. So, yes.
So what's the feeling of the community, companies like Amazon that kind of take that open source, wrap it around a product that they sell?
So how is the feeling of the community to wrap it into a product? Like, what do we feel about EDB and Citus and Microsoft and several others?
No, commercializing Postgres.
So EDB,
Like having AWS offers around Postgres.
oh, so Amazon already is.
Yeah.
So the community, the community is very, very divided and very split. You have a lot of people coming into the community that want simple RDS, get it up and running, do it, use it, that sort of thing. And you have a lot of people that have been in the community for a long time that can't stand RDS at all. So, and there is a competitor product right now that is open source that is competing with RDS as an open source version of Postgres on RDS. I just spoke with them last week. So it's very divided is the best way to put it. There's plenty of people out there that want to stay 100% where Postgres is open source. You can't really touch it or change it. And then there's a lot of people that Amazon is a perfect way to go. It's very easy to use. It's right there. Just go with it and run, and they're happy.
It's right.
What?
It's right.
It's not a question of right or wrong, Jason. What?
We don't get out of everybody.
I am not here to predict the future. Also, let's make this clear. Let's make this clear, CTO. You decide who wins and loses, not the DBA. Let's make this 100% clear. I've suggested to several tech executives, maybe one of them in this room, different paths, and they were not taken that way. So I have no control over who wins.
You chose SQL Server, not me.
I did, and it was wonderful. And I miss it sometimes, only sometimes. I definitely think, in my personal opinion, I do like Amazon RDS, and I like what they've done. They've made it easier, and there's a lot to it that I enjoy about Amazon RDS that makes it very simple. I think this competitor that's coming up, the name is Zenith Database Systems. If you ever want to look it up, go look at their open source project. I think they have a really good idea, because there's a lot of people out there that do not want to put something in Amazon, and they're going to give them a tool to do it without putting that into the RDS space. They're going to use Amazon in the background, but they're not going to be able, they're not going to be restricted. And that's one of the things that a lot of people in Postgres don't like. RDS restricts on permissions, on all sorts of things, configuration, all that sort of stuff. With this tool, there'd be no restriction. So you get your full Postgres usage, and you're still using Amazon, you get the best of both worlds. So, yeah. But yeah, it was a great discussion. They're, like I said, they're coming up in the community. They're growing, they're getting bigger, and so you'll hear about that more. So yes.
Is that different than the big animal database service that DB provides?
Well, EDB, you have to actually buy a license for it. This product is still 100% open source, in other words. They still are giving out the code and open sourcing it, in other words. They're still planning training and other things around it, but EDB's code technically is still a license.
So the Zenith product isn't like a fully managed database.
It kind of is and it kind of isn't. It's, like I said, it's balancing right now. It's very hard to tell exactly which way they're going, but they're one. Go
I
ahead.
used to work for EDB, but I didn't hear that question. I may be able to answer it. What was the question?
So EDB, so Zenith versus EDB, if EDB has its own product, in other words, is there a license there to it, which there is, and Zenith would have no license, being it's still a fully managed product, but it's not, it's still open source.
Right, yeah. So the thing to keep in mind with EDB is they're not necessarily focused on the true open source Postgres. They're really pushing their EDB's advanced server, which focuses on Oracle compatibility. So it's Postgres, yes, but not really. They really want you to buy the licensed version, and their big animal is their advanced server in the cloud, just for clarity.
Okay, that answers the question. Yes.
So since you talk to more people about Postgres and the community, so right now it's kind of hard to find qualified DBAs or DBs with a post background. Is that coming from just pure growth and demand from it, or is there something else out there that we don't know?
So the question was, and let me see if I can summarize this. Why do we not have enough Postgres DBAs on this planet to handle what we need? So I have a story and I have an answer, I think. Again, this is my opinion. I don't have to say it's not my employer's opinion, because I don't have one. So, but Postgres was a very heavily used developer-based database. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I see it going up in such scale was because of Ruby. It was bundled with every Ruby on Rails project, period. So lots and lots of Ruby on Rails developers all of a sudden had to know a little bit about Postgres, not a ton, but a little bit. Well, those little bits got bigger and bigger and bigger, but developers don't typically try to become DBAs. As a matter of fact, they rarely do. And so what you have is you have a ton of these databases that started to get bigger and bigger, but you don't have DBAs out there to manage or take care of them. And then you don't have a community out there trying to train DBAs. If you look at the Postgres community, as I showed in those resources and everything else, you have developers. You have a lot of developers. They're building extensions, they're building stuff. Every time I go into a forum or anything else, I see, here's how to write this procedure. Here's how to write this thing. It's all developer content. None of it is DBA content. So you don't have a lot of people learning the DBA content for Postgres. So you're not pushing for that. We saw this in the SQL Server community back from about 2000 to about 2006. Microsoft invested all of its marketing dollars into getting people to use SQL Server. They weren't asking people, they were asking developers. When you focus on developers, that's what you get is developers using it. You don't have DBAs. It took from 2006 to 2011 to build a DBA community, because that's when they started saying, oh, these are too big for a developer to manage. We need DBAs. That's where it comes in. So that is my theory, and I believe that Postgres is the same thing. A lot of people will say, but Postgres has been around for 15 or 20 years. Yeah, but go look at the actual numbers. We can do this off conferences. The New York City conference, or the large Postgres conference, had 300 people at it in 2011, okay? 300, not 3,000, 300. So that's not a lot of people. And they were not DBAs, they were developers. So you got a very small base to work with. Like I said, there's 14,000 people in the Slack. That doesn't mean that they're DBAs, that means they're developers. So when everybody comes to me and says, well, I need a senior DBA on Postgres, I said, there's not too many of them out there. I'm sorry, they're really not around because they haven't been doing it for that long. That's my theory of as to why. So hopefully that answers the question.
If they all got to work with you, though.
Yes, if they all. Absolutely. If they all got to work with the right DBAs, there'd be no problem whatsoever.
So
Yes.
I've had at least
2 conversations in the last 12 months with people I used to work with that were really good database people.
Mhm.
And they've since tried to change their careers to be more developer focused because they're concerned about database as a service and cloud databases, and they're not being a long-term career path. What sort of counter argument would you make to
So the question is, are DBAs gonna die? Are DBAs gonna die?
They're gonna be replaced by, or yes.
Is it not?
So I'm assuming you've probably had conversations like that. And I
Yes.
think most people in this room realize that there's so many moving parts that it's really hard for technology to just take over all of it.
Correct.
And not
Correct.
have some humans involved. So what kind of things do you say though, when people talk about long-term database careers? And that's something they want to invest.
So the advice I give for long-term database careers or for anything related to it is that you need to learn about data, you need to learn SQL, and you need to learn about the company that you work for and how you can help them. Whether that's as a DBA, a data engineer, a data scientist, a data analyst, a data junkie, a data janitor, or any other sort of data topic whatsoever. The DBA is the one that, where a DBA differs from everybody else when it comes to developers and everything else, is that they bridge the gap of both networking, talking to engineers, and talking to customers a lot of times. That's the big difference. There's a lot of people that are engineers that can't talk to customers at all. And I know many of them. And the difference is that DBAs talk to customers a lot, and talk to networking and do everything. So are they gonna die? No, I don't think they're gonna die. Are they gonna change? Absolutely. I mean, my last title was DBE, not DBA, but I've been doing it for a long time. Does it matter? No, it matters what you just keep doing that role of whatever that role is, data, SQL, and helping the customer find something. So I don't think DBAs are gonna die, even if you automate the entire thing. And SQL Server is trying, trust me. SQL Server has been trying to do this a lot before any of the other relational databases. And frankly, so did Oracle, honestly. They tried too, and they can never do it. But SQL Server's been trying. I mean, they have so many automated tuning experts and everything else, and none of them work. They still do not work to this day. So yeah, I still don't think that there's going to be a time when you can say they're just going to disappear. Will they change? Absolutely, they will change. So, and I'm not worried about Postgres. Postgres, we need them all the time right now. That's the problem. See, Postgres is at the spot where, again, I say it's at the spot where SQL Server was around 2006, 2007. The community, everything. They say it's more advanced than it might be in technology, but as far as the community, it's 2006, 2007. We're running into the same questions we answered back then, same exact questions. It's why I'm trying to help the community so much, because I was there. So I'm trying to do the very similar things.
So I have a similar follow-up question then. As you're talking to people about enticing them into field and about Postgres relational databases, what argument do you make to somebody who's looking at Postgres versus non-relational databases in terms of specialization? Or does it even matter? Do you think it's just sort of fungible?
So the question is, what advice do I give to somebody going into databases in general, relational or non-relational, or what do they go to? What do they look for? I basically, when I talk to college kids, which I'm doing right now, Utah Geek Events gets to try to talk to schools all the time. What I tell them is the same thing: learn SQL, learn data, learn either programming or operations, whichever way you want to choose, but then start learning that. But do not forget the stories and the customers that make a difference, because that's when data really matters. I actually tell them more than anything else is be able to present and talk about data, because that's going to make a bigger difference in your career than anything else. Because if you can show value through data, you're worth millions of dollars. It's that simple. Whether that's as a scientist, an analyst, or anything else, or just I can run this query and then provide you data, that's still the same thing. You have to provide that value. So that's the advice I always give to everybody. Somebody asked me once, like, well, how do you become a DBA? I'm like, you can't. There's no degree for it or anything. I mean, it's not like you go to the U and look it up. Sorry, there's no program for it. So yeah, we just say learn those pieces and go from there.
As part of Travis's question is, do you see some of these other databases taking market share or responsibility from relational databases in general?
Yes.
becoming less significant in the future?
Do I see the NoSQL movement becoming less significant? So how much they're taking away from the relational databases? Not really. I think there's going to be a nice balance for a while, and then one of them is going to come out on top even further in one section versus the other. Relational databases can't die because certain transactions and things like that have to still happen. We all went through the NoSQL movement and everything and also realized that, oh crap, certain things have to work. But the NoSQL movement produced a lot of great things that are very, very useful. Again, Elasticsearch is very useful, much better at certain things that relational databases don't do well. But you can't just turn off the relational databases. We've tried, and you just can't turn them off. So you've got a balance there that you still have to maintain. I don't see us getting rid of relational databases very soon. I definitely see that we could make some sort of technology advancement that makes it look like they're gone. There's several products out there that are getting very close to make it look like you can't really tell there's a transaction going on, but it's going to take a while to get there. It's going to take at least another 10 to 15 years to really make them look like they're disappearing. And that's not because of the database's fault. That's the coding's fault. That's the developer's fault. Get developers to not think in transactions, and yeah, you've won a game. So distributed thinking and that sort of thing is very difficult. And eventual consistency is extremely difficult. So getting them to think that way is still very hard. So. Okay, other questions? Yes.
So for someone coming from a SQL background for a long time, much transitioning to Postgres, maybe like you have sometime in the past, you had to. So what suggestions do you give to get their hand with Postgres?
I'm working on a blog post around that right now because I did it and I've been working on it. There's also one out there too from another gentleman that did it. He has some suggestions. I'll try to find them and link them in the meetup. The key things are that if you're going into a Postgres environment that is in Linux, it's definitely a big thing on Linux. Is what I learned most when I got there is I had to really learn Linux. It wasn't something I knew. So I had to learn that part to really get to the configuration and everything else. If you're not dealing with that, if you're doing something like straight RDS or Postgres like that, you can probably just learn the tools you need to talk to and the syntax differences, the little differences about the syntax between the two, and that's it. But if you've got to manage one that's on Linux, you got to learn Linux, and you got to understand the fundamental thing about Postgres is that it's tied to its operating system, where SQL Server was its own operating system inside it, and that's the two differences. Things like data files and everything else, SQL Server managed all of that itself, whereas Postgres, it's tied to the Linux operating system or whatever operating system it's on. That was a big difference to me. I thought I could run everything through SQL Server like I did through SQL Server. Like, no, I can change this. No, you can't. It's all related to the OS. So,
Just a comment. I think that would be a great topic.
Yeah,
so you're a DBA from another flavor. What's the diff, right, that you need to know about Postgres? What are those big things?
we have a huge discussion thread on that right now. Myself and a gentleman named Ryan Booz. He works for Timescale and he runs the community in Timescale. He was a SQL Server DBA, and him and I have been going back and forth since New York trying to come up with some of these ideas and stuff because he wants to see a lot of the community changes as well. So we've been talking about that exact topic, planning posts and things like that to start doing some of those things. But definitely there are a few out there. If you search for SQL Server to Postgres, there's a few DBAs that have posted some good comments on blogs and stuff on how to do it. All right, any other questions? Okay, well that should.
I just have one remark that based on the Ruby comment correlating with Postgres. I hadn't thought about. I've heard people say that they think that it also has to do with Oracle acquiring Sun, which owns MySQL, right? So
Yeah.
suddenly MySQL is owned by the dirty rotten scoundrel Oracle, and then everyone moves. How much do you think that factors in?
I would think there's definitely an exodus there too. Although you'd have to look at data there because the other part of the MySQL, a lot of people just jump to Maria or something else to go, another flavor of MySQL that was still out there, they were still available. So I don't disagree with you, but we'd really have to see the data to see a spike between the two. There's no question that in the last 5 or 6 years, Postgres went up heavily. And what that exact inflection point is, I don't know, somebody could find it, but it doesn't change that it happened. And now we need to get on it and figure out how to make DBAs. So, okay. I'm gonna stop the recording here so we can start asking some other questions too. So let me get this out of here. Let's go here, stop share.